There's a quote you've heard 1,000 times. Maybe it's on a poster in a gym. Maybe your grandmother said it to you when you were struggling with something hard. Maybe you've said it to yourself in moments of doubt. Winners never quit, and quitters never win. It sounds good. It sounds noble. It sounds like the kind of wisdom that has stood the test of time. It sounds like something you should live by. But what if I told you it's actually terrible advice? What if I told you that the most successful people in the world, the ones you admire, the ones who've achieved extraordinary things, the ones who seem to have an almost superhuman ability to persist are actually serial quitters? They quit all the time. They just quit the right stuff at the right time. Think about it. Steve Jobs quit college after 6 months. He quit projects that weren't working. He quit products that didn't meet his standards. He quit strategies that led nowhere. And what remained? A handful of things. He pushed through relentlessly, and those things changed the world. J.K. Rowling quit a stable job as a researcher to write. She quit multiple drafts of Harry Potter that weren't working. She quit agents who rejected her. And what remained? A 7-book series that sold over 500 million copies. The Beatles were rejected by every record label in England. They quit trying to break into the UK market and moved to Germany. They quit their original drummer. They quit their original name. And what remained? The most successful band in history. This is the central insight of Seth Godin's modern classic, The Dip, a little book that teaches you when to quit and when to stick. It's a tiny book, just 76 pages, but it sold over 100,000 copies in its first month and hit number 5 on the New York Times bestseller list. Why? Because it answers a question that every single one of us faces, often daily, but rarely knows how to answer correctly. When do I push through the pain? And when do I walk away? Today, we're going to answer that question. We're going to look at Seth Godin's framework, the psychology of why we're so bad at quitting, the wisdom of the Stoic philosophers who wrestled with the same question 2,000 years ago, and real-world examples of people who made the right call and people who didn't. By the end of this video, you'll have a clear, logical system for making this decision, whether it's about your career, your relationships, your creative projects, your health goals, or anything else that matters to you. Because here's the truth that nobody taught you in school. The ability to quit strategically is not a weakness. It is a superpower. Part 1. What is the dip? Let's start with Seth Godin's most important concept, the one that gives the book its title, The Dip. Godin opens his book by challenging that Vince Lombardi quote head-on. He writes, "Quitters never win and winners never quit. Bad advice. Winners quit all the time. They just quit the right stuff at the right time." So what is the dip? The dip is the long, difficult stretch between starting something and mastering it. It's the period when the initial excitement has worn off, progress feels slow, the results aren't coming, and everything in you wants to give up. Think about learning a musical instrument. The first few weeks are exciting. You're making sounds. You're learning basic chords. You feel a sense of progress. Then comes the dip, months of scales, hours of repetitive practice. The frustration of not sounding like you want to sound. The plateau where you feel like you're not getting any better. Most people quit here. Think about starting a business. The launch is thrilling. The early customers are exciting. Then comes the dip, the slow grind of customer acquisition, the cash flow problems, the rejection, the loneliness, the endless nights wondering if you made a huge mistake. Most businesses die here. Think about learning a new language. The first few lessons are fun. Then comes the dip, the grammar rules that don't make sense, the vocabulary that won't stick, the embarrassment of trying to speak and failing. Most people quit here. Godin writes, if it's worth doing, there's probably a dip. This is essential to understand. The dip is not a sign that you're failing. It's not a sign that you made the wrong choice. It's not a punishment for your lack of talent. The dip is a sign that you're doing something worth doing, something difficult, something that most people won't stick with. The dip is the barrier that separates the amateurs from the professionals, the dabblers from the masters, the people who try from the people who actually achieve. Here's the critical insight. The dip is the very thing that creates value. If it were easy, everyone would do it. And if everyone did it, the reward at the end would be worthless. The dip exists because the reward is valuable. The struggle is the gatekeeper. It keeps most people out, which means those who make it through have something rare, something precious, something that can't be easily replicated. Think about medical school. It's brutally hard. Years of study, insane debt, sleep deprivation, emotional exhaustion. That's the dip. And because it's so hard, not everyone becomes a doctor, which means that when you need a doctor, you're getting someone who survived something difficult, someone who has a level of expertise that is genuinely rare. But Godin doesn't stop there. He introduces two other curves to help us understand when we should quit and when we should persist. The cliff. A cliff is a situation where things are going fine and then suddenly disaster. You're walking along, everything seems okay, and then you fall off a ledge. A cliff is a situation that ends badly and gets worse the longer you stay. You don't want to persist through a cliff. You want to jump off before you fall off. Examples of a cliff: a job in a dying industry, a relationship that has become abusive, a business model that the market has made obsolete. Staying doesn't make things better, it makes things worse. The cul-de-sac. A cul-de-sac is a dead end. You're putting in effort, but there's no progress. No matter how hard you try, you're not getting anywhere. The cul-de-sac looks like a dip. You're working hard. You're struggling, but unlike a dip, there's no reward at the other side. It's just a dead end. Examples of a cul-de-sac: trying to become a professional athlete when you lack the physical prerequisites, trying to get a promotion at a company that has no room for advancement, trying to make a relationship work with someone who has already checked out. The key to strategic quitting is knowing the difference between a dip you can push through and a cul-de-sac that will never lead anywhere. This is the skill that most people lack. They either quit everything at the first sign of difficulty, missing out on the rewards that only come through persistence, or they stay in dead ends, forever wasting years of their lives in situations that will never improve. Godin writes, "The difference between winners and losers is that winners quit the right stuff at the right time." Part 2. Why we're so bad at quitting. If the ability to quit strategically is so valuable, why are we so bad at it? Why do we stay in dead-end jobs, toxic relationships, and failing projects long after we know we should leave? Why do we persist through dips that are actually cul-de-sacs and quit at the first sign of a real dip? The answer lies deep in our psychology, and understanding these psychological traps is the first step to escaping them. The sunk cost fallacy. This is perhaps the most powerful cognitive bias that keeps us trapped. The sunk cost fallacy is the tendency to continue investing in something time, money, energy, emotions simply because we've already invested in it, even when continuing is clearly against our best interest. Here's a classic example. You buy a ticket to a movie. 20 minutes in, you realize it's terrible. Do you stay or leave? If you're like most people, you stay, not because you're enjoying it, but because you paid for the ticket. You don't want to waste the money. But here's the logical problem: the money is already gone. It's a sunk cost. It's not coming back. Your decision should be based only on whether the next hour of your life will be better spent watching a terrible movie or doing something else. The same logic applies to much bigger decisions. You've been in a relationship for 5 years. It's not working, but you think, "I've invested so much time. If I leave now, those 5 years were wasted." That's the sunk cost fallacy. The 5 years are already gone. The question is whether the next 5 years will be better with this person or without them. Fear of judgment. We worry about what others will think. If we quit, people will call us failures. They'll say we didn't have what it takes. They'll whisper that we gave up. This fear of social judgment keeps us trapped in paths that no longer serve us. Godin addresses this directly. The people who achieve extraordinary things are precisely the ones who are willing to be misunderstood. They quit the things that don't matter so they can focus on the one thing that does. Identity, attachment. We've told ourselves a story about who we are. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a musician. I'm someone who never gives up. Quitting feels like betraying that identity. It feels like admitting that the story was false. But the Stoics would ask, is this identity serving you? Or are you serving it? Is holding on to the identity of entrepreneur worth staying in a failing business for another 3 years is being someone who never gives up. Worth staying in a relationship that's making you miserable? The fear of regret. What if I quit and then it gets better tomorrow? What if I'm just one more attempt away from success? This fear keeps people stuck for years waiting for a breakthrough that never comes. Psychologists have studied this. They've found that people are more likely to regret not quitting a failing endeavor than quitting one that might have succeeded. Because the cost of staying is not just the time you waste, it's the opportunities you miss, the things you could have done with that time instead. Recent research from a large-scale study on quitting behavior involving over 3,600 participants found something fascinating. While people generally make decent decisions about when to quit, they tend to persist with suboptimal options longer than they should and are less sensitive to how much time they have left. In other words, we're not terrible at quitting, but we are biased toward persistence. We stay too long. We give things too many chances. And in a world of finite time and energy, that bias can be deadly to our goals, our happiness, and our lives. Part 3. The Stoic Framework: Quitting as Wisdom. Long before Seth Godin wrote about the dip, the Stoic philosophers were wrestling with this same question: when do we persist, and when do we let go? The Stoics are often misunderstood as people who just grit their teeth and endure anything. You see the memes: Stoic man feels no pain. Stoic man never complains. Stoic man endures everything. That's not accurate. That's a caricature. The Stoics were deeply concerned with wisdom, and sometimes wisdom means walking away. Sometimes wisdom means quitting. Sometimes wisdom means recognizing that persistence is not a virtue, it's a form of stubbornness that will destroy you. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, wrote in his Meditations, "Ask yourself at every moment, is this essential?" That's the question. Not can I endure this? Not should I keep going? But is this essential? Marcus knew that life is short. He wrote elsewhere, "Within a very little while, both you and he will be dead. And a little after, not even your name nor his will be left." When you internalize that truth, that your time is limited, that you and everyone you know will soon be gone, you stop wasting energy on things that don't matter. You become ruthlessly selective about what deserves your persistence. You quit the non-essential so you can pour yourself into what is essential. Seneca, another great Stoic, was one of the most powerful men in Rome. He was a playwright, a philosopher, and an advisor to the Emperor Nero, one of the most brutal, unstable rulers in history. Seneca spent years in the political arena. He had influence. He had wealth. He had status. But over time, he realized that the political life was corrupting his integrity. He was being asked to compromise his values, to participate in cruelty, to look away from things he knew were wrong. So he did something remarkable. He quit. He stepped away from power, from influence, from everything he'd built. He withdrew to his estates and devoted himself to writing and philosophy, not because he was weak, but because he was strong enough to see that staying would cost him his soul. Seneca understood that sometimes quitting isn't failure, it's self-preservation. It's staying true to your principles when the alternative is compromising everything you believe in. And then there's Epictetus, the former slave who became one of history's greatest philosophers. He taught that we should constantly ask ourselves, how long are you going to wait before you demand the best for yourself? Demanding the best for yourself sometimes means quitting what's merely good enough. It means letting go of the path you're on so you can find the path that's truly yours. It means walking away from the safe, the comfortable, the familiar, not because you're running away, but because you're running towards something better. The Stoic Framework gives us a powerful lens. Quitting is not weakness when it's done with intention, clarity, and alignment with your values. The question is not, do I have the strength to keep going? The question is, does this path lead where I want to go? And if not, why am I still on it? Part 4. How to know the 3 questions. So we have the concept of the dip from Seth Godin. We have the wisdom of the Stoics about knowing when to let go. Now let's put it together into a practical framework that you can use the next time you're facing a difficult decision. When you're stuck, when you don't know whether to push through or walk away, ask yourself these 3 questions. Question number 1, am I in a dip or a cul-de-sac? This is the most important distinction. It's the heart of Godin's framework. A dip is difficult, but has a reward at the other side. The struggle is temporary. The pain is the price of admission. If you push through, you will eventually get to where you want to be. A cul-de-sac is a dead end. No matter how hard you try, you're not getting anywhere. The effort doesn't lead to progress. You're running in place, or worse, you're running away from where you actually want to go. How do you tell the difference? Look for evidence of progress. In a true dip, you may be struggling, but you're learning. You're getting better. You're moving forward, even if slowly. The trajectory over weeks or months is upward. In a cul-de-sac, the effort doesn't lead to measurable improvement. You're doing the same things, getting the same results, experiencing the same frustrations. The trajectory is flat. Question number 2, what am I becoming by staying? This is the Stoic question. It shifts the focus from outcomes to character. If staying in this situation is making you bitter, resentful, small, or compromised, that's a sign. You're not just investing time, you're shaping who you are. And if your character is being damaged, the cost is too high. No reward is worth losing yourself. Conversely, if the struggle is making you stronger, more resilient, more capable, then you're in a dip worth pushing through. The suffering is not wasted, it's forging something in you. Question number 3, what would I do if I weren't afraid? Fear is the great confuser. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of the unknown, fear of wasted time, fear of what others will think. These fears are real, they're powerful, but they're not reliable guides. Godin offers 3 practical sub-questions to cut through the fear. Am I panicking? If you're in a state of panic, don't decide anything. Panic is not a good advisor. Wait until you're calm. Who am I trying to influence? Is your persistence about the goal or about what others will think? Are you staying because you believe in it, or because you're afraid of how quitting will look? What sort of measurable progress am I making? Look at the data, not your feelings. Are you actually getting anywhere, or are you just hoping? Psychologist and author Adam Grant puts it this way: the most successful people are not the ones who never quit. They're the ones who quit the right things at the right times and double down on what matters. The key is to quit before you're desperate. Strategic quitting is proactive. It's a decision made from clarity, not exhaustion. Desperate quitting is reactive. It's what happens when you've stayed too long, pushed too hard, and have nothing left. Quit while you still have the energy to start something new. Quit while you still have the perspective to see clearly. Quit while you still have the courage to choose. Part 5, Real-world examples. Let's look at real examples of people who faced the decision to push through or to quit, and what we can learn from them. The one who pushed through, Jeff Bezos and Amazon. In the early years, Amazon was not an overnight success. It was a struggle. The dip was real and deep. Bezos faced constant pressure from investors who wanted him to slow down, to focus on profitability instead of growth, to abandon his long-term vision. But Bezos had a conviction. He believed that e-commerce was going to transform retail, and that the company that built the best customer experience would win. He was willing to endure years of losses, years of criticism, years of uncertainty because he believed the dip was worth it. He once said, "We are stubborn on vision. We are flexible on details. We don't give up on things easily." That stubbornness paid off. Today, Amazon is one of the most valuable companies in the world. Bezos understood he was in a dip, not a cul-de-sac, and he persisted. The one who quit, Ryan Holiday. Before he became a best-selling author and modern voice for Stoicism, Ryan Holiday was a successful marketing director. He worked with huge brands like American Apparel and Google. He made good money. He had status. He had influence. But he felt unfulfilled. The work wasn't aligning with his deeper values. He was good at it, but it wasn't him. So he quit. He walked away from a lucrative career to write full-time. It was risky. It was uncertain. People thought he was crazy, but it was aligned with who he wanted to become. Today, he's one of the most influential writers in the world, with multiple bestsellers and a media company that reaches millions. His quitting wasn't failure, it was the beginning of something greater. The one who quit and found another path, Mark Manson. Before writing The Subtle Art of Not Giving a FCK, Mark Manson pursued a music career. He was passionate about it. He worked hard. He played shows. He dreamed of making it. But eventually, he had to be honest with himself. The path to success in music was not aligned with his strengths. He was a good musician, but not great. The odds of making a sustainable living were vanishingly small. The dip he was in wasn't a dip, it was a cul-de-sac. So he quit. He let go of music and turned to writing. That decision led to one of the biggest self-help books of the decade, a book that has changed millions of lives. Quitting music wasn't giving up. It was redirecting his energy towards something where he could make a deeper impact. The one who pushed through, the lawyer who took 5 tries. There's a story of a man who wanted to be a lawyer. He was passionate about justice. He believed in the law, but he struggled with the bar exam. He took it once, he failed. He took it again, failed again. A 3rd time, failed. A 4th time, failed. At this point, most people would quit. They would conclude that the universe was sending a message. They would find another path. But this man believed he knew that this was his calling, so he took it a 5th time. At age 50, he finally passed. He is now considering joining the judiciary. Was this a dip or a cul-de-sac? For him, it was a dip. The reward becoming a lawyer. Serving in the judiciary was worth the extraordinary effort. The struggle forged him. The persistence defined him. But notice, only he could make that call. Only he knew what he was becoming through the struggle. Part 6. The Art of Strategic Quitting. So how do you actually do this? How do you quit strategically? Without becoming someone who quits everything at the first sign of difficulty? How do you develop the wisdom to know the difference? Here are the practical rules. Rule number 1. Quit before you start. This sounds paradoxical, but it's essential. Before you commit to something significant, decide what conditions would make you quit. Set your quit criteria in advance, when you're calm and rational, not in the heat of the moment when emotions are running high. If you're starting a business, decide, if I'm not profitable after 2 years, I'll pivot or close. If you're starting a creative project, decide, if I'm not making measurable progress after 3 months, I'll reassess. If you're entering a relationship, decide, if my core needs continue to be unmet after 6 months of honest communication, I'll leave. This is called a kill criteria. It's a predetermined trigger that tells you when to quit. It protects you from the sunk cost fallacy because you're not deciding. Emotionally, you're executing a plan you made when you were clear-headed. Rule number 2, quit to focus, not to escape. The best reason to quit something is to free up energy for something more important. Godin's point is not that you should quit everything. It's that you should quit almost everything so you can pour yourself into the one thing that matters. He writes, the next time you catch yourself wondering whether to quit or not, realize that quitting is a terrible strategy for someone in your position. Because if it's worth doing, there's a dip, and if you're not willing to go through the dip, you should quit right now and do something else entirely. That's the challenge. Most people half-ass the dip. They stay, but they don't commit. They keep one foot out the door. They don't give it everything they have because they're afraid of failing. Either commit fully to pushing through, or quit early and do something else with your full energy. Don't linger in the gray zone. Rule number 3, quit with integrity. The Stoics remind us that how we quit matters. We can walk away with grace, honesty, and respect for those we leave behind. We can quit without burning bridges, without blaming others, without making ourselves the victim. Seneca didn't storm out of Rome screaming about corruption. He quietly withdrew, preserving his integrity and his relationships. He wrote letters. He explained his reasoning. He left the door open for future connection. We can do the same. When you quit a job, give proper notice. When you end a relationship, be honest and kind. When you abandon a project, communicate clearly to the people who were counting on you. Quitting with integrity doesn't mean you failed. It means you chose. Part 7, the courage to choose. Let me tell you about a concept from psychology that might help you. Make peace with quitting. It's called error-related negativity, the brain signal that fires when we make a mistake. It's an uncomfortable feeling. It's that pang of I did something wrong that makes you want to avoid, hide, or overcorrect. When you quit something, your brain might fire this signal. It might feel like you're doing something wrong, like you're a failure, like you're betraying your commitment. But here's what you need to understand. Not all mistakes are actual mistakes. Sometimes the brain's alarm system is wrong. Sometimes quitting is the wisest, bravest, most strategic thing you can do. And your brain will still sound the alarm, because your brain is wired to avoid loss and to stick with the familiar, even when the familiar is harming you. The psychologist Adam Grant writes, "The most successful people are not the ones who never quit. They're the ones who quit the right things at the right times and double down on what matters." The courage to quit is the courage to trust yourself, to believe that you can make a new choice, to believe that walking away from something that isn't working is not a failure, it's a redirection. The philosopher and psychologist William James wrote, "The art of being wise is the art of knowing what to overlook. The art of being strategic is the art of knowing what to quit." Part 8. What you gain when you quit. We spend so much time talking about what you lose when you quit, the sunk cost, the time invested, the potential that might have been. But we almost never talk about what you gain when you quit, and the gains are substantial. You gain time that you were spending on something that wasn't working, time that you can now invest in something that might. You gain energy, emotional energy, mental energy, the energy that was being drained by the endless loop of hoping, trying, failing, and hoping again. That energy comes back to you. You gain clarity. When you finally let go of something that wasn't working, you see more clearly. The fog lifts. You remember what you actually want. You gain self-respect, not from persisting at all costs, but from honoring your own needs, from choosing yourself, from having the courage to say, "This isn't for me anymore." You gain the chance to try something new, the thing you couldn't do because you were trapped in the old thing, the opportunity you couldn't see because you were looking in the wrong direction. Here's a powerful reframe: quitting is not giving up. It's giving yourself permission to move on. The writer and activist Audre Lorde wrote, "Caring for myself is not self-indulgence. It is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare." Quitting is an act of self-preservation. It's choosing your future over your past. It's refusing to let what you've already invested dictate what you do next. Conclusion: your one precious life. Let's come back to where we started. Winners never quit. It's a beautiful sentiment. For 150 years, it's been printed on posters, recited by coaches, repeated by well-meaning parents. It's also wrong. Winners quit all the time. They quit the dead ends. They quit the cul-de-sacs. They quit the paths that led nowhere. They quit the relationships that drained them, the careers that don't fit, the goals that belong to someone else's life. But when they find something worth doing, something with a dip worth pushing through, they persist like nothing else matters. They endure the struggle. They pay the price. They come out the other side with something rare and precious. The difference is not persistence. The difference is discernment. So here's my question for you today. At the end of this 30-minute exploration, what are you currently pushing through that you should quit? And what are you considering quitting that you should push through? The answer isn't easy. It requires honesty. It requires courage. It requires you to ignore what others will think and listen to what you already know. But here's the good news. You don't have to get it perfect. You just have to get it conscious. You just have to start asking the questions. Is this a dip or a cul-de-sac? What am I becoming by staying? What would I do if I weren't afraid? Seth Godin closes his book with these words: "When you fall in love with the art of quitting, you have to also fall in love with the dip, because you can't have one without the other." The dip is real. The struggle is real. But so is the reward on the other side if you choose the right dip. Choose wisely. Quit strategically. Push through with purpose. And remember, sometimes the bravest, wisest, most powerful thing you can do is walk away. Not because you're weak, but because you value your one precious life too much to waste it on something that doesn't matter. The opposite of quitting is not staying. The opposite of quitting is choosing where to invest. Choose wisely. If this video resonated with you, share it with someone who is struggling with whether to hold on or let go. Subscribe for more deep dives into philosophy, psychology, and the art of living well. I'll see you in the next one.